Hello and welcome to the TGA Pristine Podcast, where we discuss everything from the trading card community to the company itself that grades your favorite collectible cardboard. Grab your sleeves and top loaders, it's time to rip into the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to another week of the TGA Podcast with your boys Quick Trigger and Darkest Night. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter this past weekend. Me and Jordan spent the weekend with some family, some friends. We went out to our camp that we have out in Mississippi. We didn't do any hunting or anything, obviously. We didn't go out and shoot any hogs or anything like that. We just kind of chilled out at the cabin, had some crawfish, sat out by the fire. Just had a good old time. I hope everyone had a good chance to spend some time with family and friends, and just enjoyed some relaxing time from what could have been possibly some stressful weeks for people with work or just life in general. Just kind of taking a step back and just enjoying some time with people you care about. But in this week of cards, we're going to be kind of touching on a couple things here. We have some stuff jotted down for whenever you want to send it in cards for grading. We're going to be kind of touching on some things to be looking for, of like how you should be going in to properly pack up your cards, how to keep them safe in transit, things of that nature. When you pick out the cards you want to grade, kind of things that you can be looking for in hopes of if you're searching to get your cards as the highest grade possible, or if you just want to send in some cards just to be graded regardless of the quality of it. We're going to be kind of touching on that kind of stuff. And we'll also be going into discussing with, if you want to buy already graded cards, but if you think there's a chance that it could be possibly a higher grade, or if you just want to take a card that's graded with another company, and if you decide to crack it out and grade it with TGA, then we're going to be kind of going into that. So I think we'll go ahead and start with, I think we can start with the proper way to, safely pack up your cards and make sure that they're nice and secure whenever you are sending them off to TGA.
Yeah, so definitely the first thing, by far, you must put your card in a sleeve. That should be the first thing that you ever think of when you have a card that you want to get graded, or just to protect in general. When you pull cards straight out of packs, it goes directly into a sleeve. If you care about it, if you think you might care about it, if it's just a regular rare card of any set, just have sleeves at the ready. I can't tell you how many times me and Ryan have gone out to stores, bought packs, bought boxes. We're too impatient to get home, so we crack them out and rip them open in the car. We pull something great, and now you're stuck trying to protect this card all the way till you get home. I've pulled alternate arts, I've pulled full arts that I had to just place in the flat palm of my hand all the way driving, making sure I didn't drop it or clench it up or anything. There was one time I think I pulled the full art doctor, full art trainer, and for those that don't know, I collect a lot of the female and male full art trainer cards, and try to get a lot of them graded. And I had pulled that one from Chilling Rain, and I was really excited because I hadn't pulled it yet, and it looked pristine, and but I didn't have any sleeves or top loaders, so I had to just lay it out flat on my hand and drive the 15 minutes back home. And apparently I did a good job because it came back a 10 with TGA, so that was really lucky. But yeah, so definitely the first thing, put your cards in sleeves. And then obviously right after that, you put them in top loaders, you put them in one touches, put them in hard cases, anything that's going to protect the card and keep it from getting damaged in transit. We have gotten cards at TGA that were in top loaders but no sleeves. So those are really interesting because you're only asking for that card to kind of get dinged around a little bit inside that top loader and get scratched up, and you want to make sure it stays nice, clean, and protected, and safe from any surface damages. And then going from there, if you're submitting multiple cards, I always just recommend stacking them together on top of each other. There's some people that will rubber band them together. I don't think it's that necessary, especially with how you would continue into the next steps. Some people like to put pull tabs on the sleeves, before they put them in top loaders, which means it's like a little long, skinny sticky note almost, and they'll put them on the back of the sleeved card. And then whenever they place it into a top loader, it leaves a little tab sticking out the top to make sure it's easier for you and the graders and anyone else that's handling your card to where they don't have to go prying open the top loader and pulling out the card with their fingers. They can just pull on that little tab and the card comes right out of the top loader. And is this, less chances for mistakes. Mistakes do happen. I can't tell talk from experience. Pulling out thousands of cards out of top loaders, you get pretty good at it after a while. But it's always safer than sorry, and so I do recommend that. It is a real smart and easy thing to do. They're probably like a couple bucks for 1,000 of them. They're going to be really cheap. So that's a really good thing you can do. Some people put small pieces of painter's tape over the tops of the top loaders, because it is also a possibility for the cards to slide out of the top loaders. Usually if you have a nice fitted sleeve inside a brand new top loader that's fit for that size of cards, they're not really going to move at all, especially if you pack it compact. But it's another thing you can do. You can try out and see if it works out for you, if you like it. If you don't, then just don't the next time. But from then on, you can take your card or cards that you have stacked together and putting them in bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is very essential to lessening the damage the cards take in transit. It can also really benefit them from just staying compact in one area in the box that you put it in. So then from then on, I learned a trick. I've honestly not really seen many people do this. You definitely don't have to. This is just something I picked up from comic book grading. A lot of people suggest you put a box inside of a box whenever you're submitting. And primarily it just prevents the primary box from getting any easy damage, any water damage, anything to it. So you can take your cards that are in your sleeves and top loaders, wrapped in bubble wrap, putting it nice compact inside a small box that's almost the same size as your cards. You put packing paper or extra bubble wrap inside to make sure everything's nice, compact, sturdy. It's not going to move. You tape up that box completely shut, and then you find a slightly larger box that you put that box into, and then adding bubble wrap, packing paper, anything to keep that compact inside the second box. And that's just an extra sense of security for people to use if you don't want to risk the chances of it getting any kind of wear and tear damage on the outside and eventually getting inside the box, or if there's going to be heavy rain or snow or anything where it could be in transit, because TGA is in New Hampshire, so it does have its fair share of harsh weather. So if you want to make sure it's extra protected going into that, I would recommend, if you can, doing the double box method that I did for comic books, because it's just always safer than sorry. And one thing, another even farther mode of precaution you can take is using painter's tape. Always use painter's tape, except for when you're taping up your box and taping up your label. You want to make sure you're using painter's tape around your cards, because it's a easily removable and non-damaging tape. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but it's better than regular Scotch tape. Do not use that. Do not use packing tape. If you're going to tape the tops of your top loaders, always use painter's tape. And when you're taping around your cards, like what I'm about to say, use painter's tape. Whenever you put the bubble wrap around your cards, you can also use painter's tape to tape down your cards to the inside of the box to just reinsure that those cards are not going to shift and move around. It'll keep them stationary in place, especially when you add the extra packing paper and bubble wrap. You're definitely going to almost guarantee that it's going to stay in place and not going to shift and be in as high quality and condition as possible. And to me, I feel like if you follow a lot of those steps, you'll definitely have a high chance of it being sent off and receive a TGA in the same quality that you had it.
Yeah, because I know like whenever I've packed up stuff in the past, I'm sure Jordan, tends to pack stuff a little bit more secure than me. But I always still make sure, to make sure all my cards are in sleeves and like so they don't like so people have like preferences of using like penny sleeves or some people will just send them in like just the standard like Pokemon sleeves you get from the ETBs and such. It really doesn't matter what sleeve you use. It's just penny sleeves are typically more common for people that submit cards and stuff like that, just because you can easily just like look from the front and the back for the quality of the card, and everything like that. So yeah, you just make sure they're sleeved. They're in top loaders. Doesn't really matter what kind of top loader they're in, just as long as they're nice and secure in there. They're not like it's not like loose in the top loader. Make sure you have like the proper size ones for those. Yeah, bubble wrap is a big, is your friend. Whenever you're packing up that kind of stuff, even if you feel like it's too much, it's just not enough. Because you want to just make sure that there's no chance that the cards could possibly be damaged on the way to being sent off for grading. So just make sure that you're taking all the proper precautions. You have the right kind of stuff you're going to be sending the cards in, and yeah, you'll pretty much be set with all that. So I think now we can transition into talking about the kind of things you should be looking for whenever you want to send your cards in for grading. Whether you're trying to get like, your best chance of getting a perfect grade, or if you're just trying to, slab up some cards for your personal collection, no matter like if it's like from like your childhood, so they might be in rough shape. Like what are some of the major things that we can be looking for when sending in our cards for grading?
Yep. So the number one first thing I always notice and look for is the centering. This primarily comes into play with Pokemon. Whenever I first started grading cards, it was like exclusively Pokemon cards, and a lot of the times, you can generally, for the most part, any person with regular vision can eye up a card online or in person, and you can tell for the most part how good the centering is and whether or not it's worth getting graded just on that fact alone. There are tools, measuring tools you can use. You can even do like pixel counters on your computer. There's little things you can download where you can click and drag, and it'll tell you how many pixels it is one way to another. Then you're also guaranteeing that the person that took the picture of the card you're looking at has it like completely flat and has a great picture of it, well lit. But that's one thing you can do. You can also just train yourself. You can just keep studying up on your Pokemon cards, on whatever cards that you're wanting to get graded, and just start really practicing and looking at the centerings, or look at graded cards online and that have their subgrades, and you can start analyzing those cards yourself and testing yourself on what those subgrades could be, and then looking at what they are and trying to find out how. It's one thing we'll touch on later on, but it is not ever going to be guaranteed that you're going to be able to tell the quality of a card when it's in a slab. Through that plastic, you're not going to see every surface issue. You might not pick up on anything on the corners or edges. Centering, you can still pretty much tell it's the same, but through a slab, possibly in a sleeve and a slab, you're never going to get that full high quality imaging and analyzation that the graders did. But yeah, so centering is always the number one thing I always look for. If the centering is obviously off, and it always depends on the person too. If you don't care so much about what the grade might be, or if the centering isn't a complete killer for you, and because everything else could be pristine, it can be great, and just because the centering is off doesn't mean the whole grade is going to tank. A lot of companies, they'll just go a half a grade or a grade higher than the lowest grade. So if you think the centering is like a 8.5 or a 9 and everything else is great, it could still be a 9 or a 9.5 card, just because the centering on the back is off, centering on the front is a little off, or it's a little crooked or anything. So don't let it be the one reason why you don't buy a card, but definitely make that a top priority whenever you're looking. Another thing that especially pertains to Pokemon is whitening. We see this sometimes in Yu-Gi-Oh! And My Hero. They usually have little divots It's almost like edge wear or damaging, but it's just like tiny little indents that come out as like little white spots. But Pokemon is notorious for whitening, and it's just conditioning on the edges of the back of the card primarily, because like that under base layer is white around those edges, and so a lot of times when cards get played with and they get traded around and they're like not get put in sleeves, or if they're just vintage and people kept them in binders, they're pretty much always going to have whitening. So whenever you're looking at cards online, definitely see or ask for good photos of the front and the backs of the cards. And for Pokemon, it'd be good if they're against a completely black background, because then you can definitely start to tell when it has little whitening issues or even like surface issues. But those surfacing issues always come with lighting. If the lighting is not good, then it's really hard to tell those potential surface issues. And because someone online could always say, this card is mint, this card is near mint, but always trying to get as many high detailed pictures as you can if the card is raw, and if you're able to contact the seller, or if you can potentially even look at the card in person before purchasing. Those are things that you can really look for, and a lot of times the inspection process isn't as complicated as some people might think. Like all you really need is a good ring light and potentially one that has a microscope attached to it. You can find these on Amazon. Like you need to look up like graders, trading card grading ring lights or magnifying ring lights. There you can buy them for like 30-40 bucks maybe. I believe they are going for right now. And majority of the time, you're just using it for that light. Having good, consistent overall lighting on your cards and analyzing it close up is definitely going to be your top way of telling if a card is good to go or not. You're never really going to need to use a magnifier unless you just really want to get some certification to yourself that this card is clean and doesn't have any, maybe debris or anything attached to it. Majority of the time, the graders are not going to be looking at every little pixel into the card, making sure everything is crystal clean and pristine. Maybe if it had the potentials of immaculates, that's when they get into hyper focus and making sure everything is absolutely perfect with it. But at the end of the day, just good, consistent lighting. Hopefully you have the card in hand and you can inspect it. You're looking out for centering. You can buy, there's even like physical tools you can buy, like these little plastic sheets that can go over cards safely, and it'll tell you where, at the center of the card should be, and then it'll give you all of the measurement dimensions going outwards, so you can compare the centering to it yourself. So that's an easy way to also start practicing and training on noticing that. Edges and corners looking out, especially for Pokemon, those whitening marks or any other kind of like divots or damages, anything. Because having that consistent light, you can really tell when a card has a little indent that you maybe couldn't tell in this neutral lighting. But once you move it around at all these different angles under this consistent light, you'll start to see changes in the card if it has anything like that. You can potentially save yourself sending in a card you thought was going to be a high grade, but in fact comes back different, and now you have the knowledge and the skills going into it that you weren't going to be surprised if it did that. And but yeah, then the surface, you can see all that stuff as well. But those are my kind of like tips and tricks to look for whenever you're wanting to send in a card to get graded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I know there's been times when whenever it's just like me, just like glancing at cards and stuff, like I very rarely really go deep into it. And obviously, I check for like obvious stuff, like try to see if there's whitening on the corners or on the edges or anything like that. Try to make sure like the centering looks pretty good overall. Obviously, you're not always going to catch like a lot of the stuff with like if there's anything on the surface of the card, especially if there's like a lot of stuff going on the front of the card. It's going to be really hard to notice a good bit of stuff. I mean, you can usually catch print lines pretty good. Those are a little bit more obvious than if there's like some type of other like marks on the card or
That's
anything
what,
like that.
yeah, I totally forgot to
Um,
mention print lines. That was like,
yeah,
that was in my mind going into this. I'm like, oh yeah, print lines, that is humongous in Pokemon. It's pretty
yeah,
noticeable in My Hero, but yeah, print lines is a huge thing to look out for, especially those old vintage hollows from the late 90s, early 2000s. Because you can get, there's a lot of scratch potential to get on those hollow foils as well.
yep.
And like the more hollow foilness to it. It's like that Chansey card I know that's like impossible to get like a perfect grade out of because it always has like a print line or two on it for like how much foil is exposed. And there's some other like dark cards, like Umbreon cards have like those dark seams in it that are hard to get amazing grades out of. But yeah, print lines are another huge thing to look out for that are pretty obvious whenever you inspect it, but not so much under like neutral lighting.
Yeah, yeah, you can really notice print lines on like certain kinds of cards and stuff. But like even like nowadays, you'll see like modern cards that will end up having print lines and stuff. Like I pulled a alternate art from I can't remember what set it was from. It's like the Golurk alternate art card. It's like kind of reminds me of like the Iron
Yeah.
Giant. I pulled that card, and unfortunately, mine had a really noticeable print line on like the right side of the card, like going down, and I was like pretty bummed. I mean, like even if it was in like perfect condition, it's like not something that's like really probably like worth anything. And like I don't know, I maybe would have gotten it graded just for like my PC or something, just for fun. But yeah, unfortunately, there will be times where those cards that probably will end up being like worth a good bit of money will have print lines and stuff, and it's like the worst time when like you pull something that you really want or something that's like crazy valuable, and then you just like notice something so obvious like right away. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
I was opening up Evolving Skies and I actually pulled the Rayquaza V alt art, and I was so happy. But then as soon as I was like moving the other cards away, I noticed there was like a nick on like the corner of the card. I'm like, oh god, that bummed me out so much. I was like, I already know that card's not gonna grade well, and so of course because of that, and I think there were like the centering was like a bit off too, but because of that, the card ended up grading an 8. And so I was just like, man, like that just sucks. Cause like that was like one of the cards I was so happy to pull myself because normally I have to buy those cards from like eBay and stuff for like my personal collection and everything. But I was like really happy that I actually got to pull that one. But yeah, unfortunately, it did have that issue. But yeah, but then there's times when I bought cards off of eBay that I had a pretty good feeling about, and some that I bought were ended up grading like an 8.5 or a 9 or 9.5 or whatever, just because I think I missed a couple of things that maybe I didn't notice from pictures. Because um, yeah, that's another thing too, is that you have to be careful with like buying certain stuff, even if people post pictures, because you never know if like the pictures are actually like genuine or if there's like actual like recent pictures. People could have just took pictures of that card like forever ago, and at some point since then, like the card could have been damaged or something like that. So you never really know. But obviously, if you try to ask for like current pictures and stuff, usually if people are willing and able to, they will send you like current pictures of the card and stuff. But I went ahead and bought. This was like a couple of years ago, or last year. I can't remember. I think it was like a couple of years ago. I bought the Rayquaza V Max alt art from Evolving Skies. Because that was like one of like my top like cards I wanted for my personal collection. Because I love Rayquaza, I love Dragon type Pokemon, and Rayquaza is like probably like my all time favorite legendary. Um, and so I wanted to just go ahead and just say F it, I'm gonna splurge a little bit, and so I wanted to go ahead and buy it. So I was looking on some listings on eBay, and I found this one that just looked really solid overall. Like it just looked super clean. It had pictures of like front and back, all the corners, all this like pretty much all the pictures you could ask for of all the angles of the card, and it looked really solid. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go with the chance of this. There's probably maybe a chance that this could still get a 9.5, but even then, it's like a 9.5 of that card is like amazing. And so I went ahead and bought it. I think I paid like 250 ish or so on eBay for it. Um, and then I submitted it with TGA, and it actually ended up getting a 10. I was pretty psyched about that. I was like super ecstatic. I was above the moon. I was just so happy. I knew that like it wasn't something I was like really planning to sell. Like I was buying it for the intention of like keeping it for myself and maybe, if stuff comes up and later down the road, maybe there's like some other stuff that I want to get for myself, and it'd be like, hey, I can try to make some money off of selling this card to Pristine 10. So then that's the thing is like, even if someone wanted to take my card and like they know it's like a 10 with TGA, and let's say like someone just wanted to buy it just to crack it out and they wanted to submit it with like Beckett or CGC or something because they wanted a chance of either getting like a black label or like a perfect 10 or something with them. So that kind of gets us into the topic of if you're choosing to buy already graded cards and you are looking to possibly crack them out and resubmit them for grading because you want to have a chance of possibly getting a higher grade, or obviously there's the chance that you could just end up getting the same grade, or there's also a possibility that you could end up with a lower grade.
Yep. Yeah, I can't even begin to think of the amount of cards I had cracked out at TGA. It almost seemed like it was my job at one point. So many people would submit already graded slabs and want to get them cracked out and have TGA labels. It's really cool. Um, Other times we'd have to crack out cards because we realized there's something wrong with the label before we shipped it out. Our quality control team would catch like misspellings or the wrong set number or whatever it may be. There's always we're all human, mistakes happen, and so in the beginning of the time I worked there, I would be absolutely uncontrollably nervous going to crack out anybody's slab. You're always just worried about damaging the card or doing something, but in reality, like you have to mess up really bad in order to damage those cards when you're cracking, or just not know what you're doing. A lot of the times you can, you take I forget what they're called, but they're essentially like needle nose, like pliers, or just like the sharp kind of like clamps. I'm totally not saying whatever the actual tool is, but it's possible I can like throw up a picture of it whenever I find it. And so you just use that tool and you trim around the edging all the way around the slab until you're able to just pry it off safely, and then you take your card out. If you just trim like the edge, it's not really going to do anything. But there you can tell like how thick the border is around the edging for TGA, PSA, Beckett, CGC. If you just like crack that out and just leaving like the actual face and backings of the slab, you'll be able to pry it off and be able to retrieve your card fairly safely. You can also look up YouTube videos. There's plenty of people that do it, and I can actually teach you instead of me just telling you how to do it. I'm a very big visual learner. If someone's just telling me how to do something, it's so much easier for me to just watch someone do it. It's how I learn all like the instrument stuff. Like I watch someone play the piano, I know how to play the piano. The only thing that's different, if I hear people playing the drums, I know how to play the song, just because I have years of experience in that. But a lot of the times, if you just watch a video on how somebody does it and does it safely, and you'll be able to replicate it. You can even practice by buying some super cheap slabs and just cracking out some cards that way if you're still worried about it. But yeah, I had a kind of a similar thing with Ryan, where I, for the longest time, was chasing the Blaziken VMAX alternate art. Blaziken is my favorite Pokemon of all time. I opened an unhealthy amount of boxes of Chilling Reign, which is already a bad habit to get into because Chilling Reign's pull rates are not very friendly. I had a couple God boxes, though, a couple boxes that had multiple alternate arts and a gold card and a couple full art trainers, a rainbow card. Like some of them were too good to be true, and others I got one VMAX and that was it. But spoiler alert, never pulled the Blaziken VMAX alternate art for myself, so I went on eBay and for $200 won on auction a CGC 9.5 Blaziken alternate art. And I believe it had 210s and 295s as its subgrade, so I knew it had a good chance at getting a 10 with TGA. And I cracked the card out myself and submitted it and got it graded, and it was very awesome when it came back at 10. And so it's a huge highlight of my collection. I love it so much. And that was a huge case of cracking something out making it worth it. Because it's about a $200 card in a 9.5. It's about a $500 card in a 10, and so it was definitely a huge beneficial gamble for me. And to have like the token card of my favorite Pokemon graded in a pristine 10 from TGA is a huge highlight of my collection. But yeah, cracking cards can always come with risks, and maybe the card even comes back lower than what it did, or it can even just end up staying the same. But you still got your questions answered on you have this card and you think that it could be better, and so you're kind of just letting that not dominate your mind anymore. And but yeah, like I was mentioning earlier, though, like you're not going to be able to fully tell the quality of the card when it's in that slab. No matter what kind of lights you're using against it, no matter how good you think your vision is, you're still looking at it through plastic. And what you think could be on the card could be on the slab itself. And so your best bet, if you're really going to want to crack it out, is to just crack it out and study the card and then resubmit it. You can do your best. Like I said, centering you can tell. The slab ain't going to disturb any of that. But anything else, really, you're going to be taking a gamble on. But if you feel it in your heart and it's in your gut telling you to, try and get something better out of it, then I say totally go for it. It worked out for me. I've thought about it with some other cards that I want to do. It can work and it can not, but it's always just up to you and whether you think it's going to be worth it or not.
Yeah. Because I know I actually just recently cracked out some Naruto cards from some different slabs, and I'm planning to get them regraded with TGA. And so who knows? Maybe all three of them will end up getting the same exact grade. Honestly, that would be perfectly fine with me. Hoping that maybe one of them could possibly get a little bit of a higher grade, but yeah, it's kind of the risky run. With grading them, there's also chances that it could be lower. So you kind of have to just go in with that mindset that there are chances that, something might have happened with the card when you're cracking it out and stuff. That's why it's like when you're doing that process, you have to be really careful with it, kind of know what you're doing. You could always look up videos and how other people do it. Obviously, every slab's gonna be different. All the companies use different kinds of materials and tools and all kinds of things to encapsulate the cards. So just know that you may not be able to easily just pry open a slab or something from every company. Some are really packed in tight, so you gotta make sure you're just being very careful, using proper protection and tools and such when you're doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I'm kind of interested to see what the new grades will be for those 3 Naruto cards I'm gonna be sending in. I have them actually still on my desk, so I'm gonna be kind of using them as reference to see how it kind of compares to when I get them graded with TGA. But yeah, that was kind of the main few topics we kind of wanted to go over today. I don't know, Jordan, if you had anything, but I think we can maybe wrap it up nice and sweet for today.
Yeah, no, that was basically everything we wanted to cover, hitting on all the main topics of what to look for whenever you want to submit a card for grading, if you want to crack it out or not, if it's already graded, and just how to properly and safely submit your cards to TJ or to whomever that you want to get them graded. We just want to give you all that knowledge and our experience with it, and to hopefully limit the amount of mistakes you could be making or any kind of early grading errors that someone can run into. I know I try to do all my research as possible whenever I'm submitting stuff in, to just up my chances of having a positive experience. But yeah, guys, we really do appreciate and value each and every one of you that listens to the TGA Pristine Podcast. On behalf of me and Ryan, thank you so much for listening. And as always, if you want it pristine, you got to keep it clean. Thanks for listening, guys. See y'all next time.
Take it easy. All right, guys, and if you've made it to the end of the podcast, we have our patented question of the day, and it is: have you ever purchased a already graded card in the attempt to get it cracked out and either resubmit it with the same company to possibly get a higher grade, or to send it off to a completely different company and to try to see how the grades compare? So thank you again, guys, for listening, and if you want to get it pristine, you got to keep it clean.